Yeah. Hello, everyone. John Doyle and Emily Gullikson from OptixEQ, and special treat. We're going to look at I guess it's a mandatory pick six payout at Gulfstream on Saturday. Is that right?
Well, fingers crossed, because we're recording this on Friday, and I'm not a praying person, but maybe if there are some praying people out there, we'll make it to the carryover on Saturday.
Okay. What's the pot up to? Do you know?
I didn't look, but it'll be whatever. Yes.
Yeah. So no, Emily mentioned it, and it's a great sequence. So I was like, yeah, this is pretty good as I started digging in. So we're going to give you a lot of information. Emily and I have made a lot of big pick six tickets in our day. We're not going to make a ticket for you, but we're going to help you make a ticket. We're going to give you a lot of good information, maybe how to approach certain races, what's their spreads, where you maybe could single or key certain horses. I think we're going to give you some long shots. I know I am. And I know Emily's probably going to give you two. So it's going to be good, because I think this sequence, even if you play the pick six or not, you can play the pick four, the pick five, or just bet the races individually. There's a lot of opportunity in all of these, right? So it starts with race 7, I hope, because that's where I started.
Yep.
Okay, and it's an allowance. Oh no, it's an starter allowance race, and I got the plot up. And so, Emily, what we're going to do is try to move as quickly as possible, but it's hard. But we'll try. But I'm going to give you the kind of approach. I looked at this race, and the first thing I did was kind of like toss the 1 and 2. You just kind of look at their plots there. I mean, I just think they're up against it.
Well, one thing I'll add, like in terms of the plot, is I did like the hashtag plot puzzle, looking at these 5 furlong races, because it's kind of a different distance, right? The shorter sprint, and quad 1 squares, do very, very, very well in this race. And what's that?
What'd you say, quadrant 1?
Quadrant 1, yeah. And it's weird because it changes at 5.5. It's like it shifts after that. But those horses that have tactical speed do have an advantage in these type of short races.
Yeah, so let's look at the early paces. I just wanted to get the 1 and 2 out of there, because if we're making a ticket, we got to make room. So if you evaluate the early pace, you can see there's 3 horses there: the 3, 5, and the 9. And they're pretty close, right, in terms of where they are in the plot. So there's contention there, right? So I'd be looking for kind of a speed of the speed type in here, or a horse that I guess can press. I don't know. I mean, I had a tough time. I looked at it, and for me, I wasn't crazy with the 9.
Same.
Okay, because let me just quickly, because I'll just go into why I don't like him. You're probably with me on this, but I think he's a little cheap. And like when you see his good rate, he's got these 90s, but first of all, you see all the red. That's always kind of a negative, right? If he doesn't get the lead, he doesn't do well, and he's got a lot of no finishes. Red is kind of negative. But his 2 good races, his recent race, the B+, it was an off the turfer. Those races are just completely different in terms of quality. And if you look at just the Optix fig ranges of the horses he's been running up against, they're inferior to the Optix fig range in this race. Not the same horses. So I think, from my perspective on the early pace scenario, the 9's a toss, because he needs the lead, and I don't think, even if he gets it, he's going to be compromised, and I don't like him.
I went the same way. I just prefer the 3 and the 5
Me
over
too.
him. Yeah.
Me too. And I think you have to use both of them, but I think the 5 is really interesting, because the 5 is third off a layoff. That race at Tampa, okay, he ran into a good horse. I forget the name of that horse, Yaga Mason, something, I don't know. He's a nice horse. And this horse showed speed and kind of faded. I think, look at some of those numbers back, in his career, 95, 104, 100. I mean, he's got some really top-notch races. And he's not a need to lead, even though he might be the horse that'll be on the lead, because he does have a lot of speed. This is, I think third off a layoff, I think this horse might be a surprise, and he's a big price in the morning line, 12-1. So yeah,
very much so. I think coming in from Tampa, I think maybe that's why the morning line people won't necessarily look at him. But with that new feature, it's more of a lateral, kind of a lateral move between the Optix figure range and purse, and with those back numbers, and even some of those races that are actually on synthetic from Golden Gate Fields, where he's running comparable numbers to his dirt numbers. So based on the plot, kind of based on the profile and the price, I mean, you have to just use them, like either win or lose. a couple horses that I wanted to mention. I think those ones are A's, but another horse I could maybe move up into an A is the number 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm against the 8, but I want to hear your reasoning on him.
Because it's sort of a more kind of lightly raced, but there's limited data. It is a bit of a class change coming into this spot. And just in terms of the plot, maybe has a little bit more tactical speed. I don't like him as much as those other two, but there were some things that just you have a lightly raced 4-year-old, just some upside factors that kind of fit. But I could see why.
I see what, so for me, the way I evaluated this race was, okay, throw the 1 and 2 out. 3 and 5 are the best early pace. And I thought the 4 and 7, because, for some reason, like you said, especially with a gap between the early pace horses and late pace horses, is sometimes hard to overcome. But if they really go at it, the 3, 5, and the 9, and someone comes running, to me, it's more the 4 and 7 than anybody, because I think they're really closers. Like the 6, the problem I have with the 6 is, I think he's just toppy. I think
Oh yeah, he's a 10-year-old coming
10-year-old
off
runs
top.
a big race, and then he usually backs up. But the
Toss.
4 and the 7 are more like closers. So if the race went to a closer, right, I'm looking for the 4 and 7, because the 8, my problem with the 8, yeah, he may be closer, but he's got to work harder to be closer, because he's more of a, I think he runs a little bit closer to the pace than the 4 and the 7. The 4 and 7 are more closers. So if it fell to closers, I'd be using like the 4 and 7, backing up with the 4 and 7, or maybe spread 3, 4, 5.
I think the way I kind of looked at this race is I could make a case where the 8 is actually sitting where the 6 is.
Yeah,
just in terms of trip, because he is getting clash relief coming out of those 5 furlong sprint races that are on the turf. And back to a level that's comparable to the class level when he won at Presque Isle. So I just kind of saw, maybe there's a little bit more upside, since I didn't like the 6. And if the 8 is sort of in that spot, the 6 is one of those, just in terms of like when I was doing the plot puzzle, can win from that spot. So that's where I upgraded the 8.
I can buy that. I'm not going to argue with that. So I think we're pretty much in agreement. But if that 5 is anywhere near his morning line, I'm betting that horse to win. That's for sure. Okay, so we're good with that race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, race 8, we're going to move on. This race, to me, Emily, it's spread. And I'll show you why. It's just, if you look at I like to use this filter the last 45 days. Okay, just to see where everyone in their current form cycle. And if you just look at the speed figures, you can't separate these horses. Okay, I know it's only the last 45 days, it's only their last race, but still, that gives a lot of indication of where these horses are at. For me, it's just difficult to separate a lot of these horses. For
the most part, people use like the ABC situation, and I think that's kind of a good starting point. But I'm typically more of like an A and then a C. Like I do very little like kind of B's, and this is a race where I did like I was like I have to go ABC, and I mean it's got the A's out there, but I mean there's some tough to trust.
I have, you want to hear mine? Because I do have an opinion on somebody here.
Okay.
I do like I think the 6. Yeah, it's going to be the first time 2 turns, the 6. And I'm going to have to give it to the people who yelled at me because I took the old plot button off and then I had to put it back on. I was wrong. I was according to Fonzie. You don't know who Fonzie is probably. But
I'm not that young.
Was it Happy Days? He couldn't say he was wrong, so he would go on rubber. And I had to do because this is one of those 7.5 furlongs, right? Am I right on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 7.5. So it's a sprint. So I didn't have the surface distance looks like a sprint, so it's hard to read that plot. But if you go to the surface, you can see the 6 plot's pretty good there.
Wait. Okay. Yeah.
The 6 there. He plot's pretty good because the race is tough to read on pace, right? Because there's no contention, no speed rating, but there's no horse that really stands out. You could say, well, the 10 stands out, but that 10's big race was sprinting. you know, so, and if you look at his form, you can see when he routes, he kind of gives it up. So that big square is kind of misleading. His plot is more like the one to the left, where he might get an easy lead and so forth. So he's my B in this race, the 10, just in case he gets a, you know, scenario where he's just kind of low. But the 6 is one of my A's, and the other A, and the horse I really kind of like is the 1.
Yeah, I think we're in the same spot in this. And I did kind of plot puzzle on this because the 7.5 is kind of different. And then I looked at those races with the rail setting. So today the temporary rail is at 15 feet. So I really wanted to kind of look at those races to just kind of see if there's some patterns. And it does seem like horses at the 7.5, when the rails are at 15 feet, when they're further out, speed holds. But at 15 feet, 20 feet, you kind of, it favors horses that are stock and finish, like kind of that like second flight, mid-pack type horse, not closers, not on the front end. So those are horses that I kind of like started to upgrade. So I went like 110. I couldn't quite get to the 6 just because this many times they haven't really stretched this horse out.
I know.
Yeah.
But you know, it just maybe falls into the. I agree with that. The 1 though, I think might be the horse. Third, this is kind of third off the left. Got scratched. I don't know why, but this horse has good back class. He's at the lowest level. I modified his trip. It was traffic last time, so I thought he had trouble, right? Because he really got cut off, and he had to take. You know, he kind of yanked the horse to the inside. And I just thought there was more there. And if you just look at his back numbers and his back class, if you look at class on this horse, I think he kind of like towers over the field. Yeah, look at it.
Oh yeah.
And I think, so to me, he's going to be one of my A's, you know, and maybe the 6 and 10 are B's, or, you know, one of them is an A. And then the rest, I would still have an all on here just in case, because it looks like one of those types of races.
I also had an A on the 5, which I'm not crazy about the price. That did bother me because this type of horse I would just want a little bit more on. But in terms of form, you know, in terms of trip, in terms of running style, he has that kind of fits that profile for what I looked up. But just in terms of form cycle too, this is third start of the form cycle, and they're bringing him back to the level that he ran on January 6th, even though that was a synthetic race. At least that kind of just shows me in terms of intent. This is sort of where they think the horse belongs. They stepped him up last out, and now they're going to kind of cut back. So it just looks like the horse, you know, it's a big rider change as well. Just looks like a spot where, you know, you've got a lot of positive intent, a horse to use.
Yeah, no, and gets a big rider upgrade too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good analysis there, I think. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so we're going to go to race 9. I'm right. Okay. I tossed the 5, 9, and 12. Okay, I just don't think they, you know, I just don't think they have a chance. Do you think any of those have a chance?
No, but I have a key horse in here.
Okay, so I do too, but it's probably not safe. So the common race, there's 5 horses that came out of the common race. The 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. To me, I don't like the 2 that are going to be the favorite, right? The 2 and the 3. It just seems like get perfect trips, and they didn't just. I mean, I could see using them, but I don't like them. I mean, they just seem to get perfect trips. Now they're going to get more distance. Even I don't know. I agree.
I mean, in general, I'm gonna like play against that race, but you know, the 2 is the favorite. Certainly one that just in terms of lax value, because you kind of look at him, at least at first, and you're like, well, you know, plot looks good, numbers are improving, you know, there's no red. So, you know, you kind of like, as a favorite, I get it. I went back and watched that race, and then also just kind of looked at the way that they were betting that race. And so that horse, let me just kind of like,
I can pull it up if you want.
Look at my notes, but he was called off the 3-1 morning line. It was almost 9-2, I believe, in that race.
Almost 5-1.
Oh yeah, almost 5-1, and that was a 3-1 morning line. And Pletcher had another horse in that race that was actually favored, that was more fancied than this horse. And those two pleasure horses were pretty much side by side for show. So I think he's probably a little bit dressed up. And just that race altogether, it's like I watched it and like, it's like, I don't even, you know how I am, like I can remember races, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't even remember that race. It was just like, it's so like
it was
blah.
banal.
And so, you know, that just, there's no reason I really want to take a horse out of that race. I think those horses are going to get attention because it's like the connections, those finishing positions. And again, I'm looking for an outsider of that group.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. If I had to take anyone in that race, it'd be the one. I thought he was sneaky in that race. He was on the inside. He kind of got shuffled back, and he came running again late. And I think we had scared as the comment. I'm not sure it was that, but I don't know. Wasn't crazy about the ride, and you know, it's always hard to close up the rail in Gulfstream. But you know, I thought that was a pretty good effort. I think that horse, especially going longer, might have a little upside. So that was one I would consider. But the horse, I don't know. The horse I like is the 11.
Same. That's my key.
Okay. And he comes out of better races. You know, last race, you know, he got kicked back. Great surface distance plot. You know, I don't know. People,
race.
If you're watching if you're watching New York, and I'm not saying this because you know it's us. If you're watching New York races and you're not following kickback, you're out of your mind. I mean, it's just been it's been incredible in terms of horses upside. And you know, I think this horse that was a good race, and that horse got destroyed with kickback during that effort. And I just
I mean, you mentioned a good race. Early voting came out of that race and won the Withers.
Yeah, won the Withers, right?
And then the fourth place finisher, a horse called Main Event, he was a B+ dominant maiden special weight winner on January 30th. It was a turf race, but it was here at Gulfstream Park. So there's some race strength as well.
Yeah, so I think we're both keen with 11 in here, right? Yeah, my backups are you know, 1, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going against the 2 and the 3. I'm going to use the 1 out of that common race. I thought the 6, first time 2 turns, who knows? He had a pretty good Optix fig range in his common race. I mean, in his debut. Who knows? Maybe he can stretch. And then the 8, he has improving numbers, and that was the only reason for that. But I'm going to be 8 is going to be 11 for me.
Yeah, I kind of went the same way. As far as the 6, he actually ran on 129, but it was a different race, 7 furlong race. But a pretty solid Optix figure range for that race. It's actually a higher Optix figure range than the 8.5. And the note says scared, and I didn't really see scared because I typically think of scared when you're like down inside, don't want to pass horses, because he was kind of outside in between horses and used out of the gate. And I would say almost like more shuffle, but almost even prep. Maybe this horse does want to show speed going longer, just kind of based on those visuals. And then the 8 is the other pleasure, quote unquote. But that race, January 22nd, that was a Lecomte undercard. So, you know, they're not shipping, you know, they're shipping.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, like, I mean, the numbers look good and improving, but, you know, you can almost like, this is almost like a, I don't know if it is, it's kind of a lateral move, I guess. But, I mean, this horse was running against, you know, better horses in Aqueduct. Fairgrounds is, like, to me, a tier down from New York.
But that's why I mentioned, because on the big days, sometimes they're stronger races because, you know, barns want to showcase.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're pretty much in agreement with that race. So no arguments. Race 10. Okay. I don't know how you feel, but to me, I think 6 may be a single.
I think we have the same. We're working off the same notes. the same thing.
I mean, there's absolutely no pace in this race. He could either take I mean, that comes out of really good races. The reason his form is probably the way it is, he was chasing a real fast pace. It was a nice horse. He's got European form that would probably win this race easily from a class perspective. He either gets out there or he stalks whoever may go, and he wins the race. That's kind of the way I was looking at this.
Yeah, I just, you know, these horses, they're coming out of it just in terms of condition, the same optional claiming 25,000 N1X, and you have a group of those horses that are coming out of the 1229 common race. And I just thought that race was weak.
Yeah.
And so I think the 6 is coming out of the stronger division, and he has recency. I mean, 1229 that's a while ago.
Yeah.
So for a group of those horses to not have run back in almost 2 months is a little suspect. So I think the 6 with the recency, having the stronger race, just has upside. A couple others in here that I thought were interesting. I mean, the 8,
Yeah.
who has numbers, but again,
That's my backup, no doubt.
yeah. And then the other one, and we'll have to fix this because it's obviously a typo in Optix notes on the number 10. Oh, do you want to talk about the 8 first?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I will tell you about the 8 is that I like McGahee. He's one of the few guys I would trust with a horse off a layoff. He can bring him back and running, and obviously this horse has got talent. So yeah, and look, let me just look at the form, all green. Nothing to really knock. Just a layoff, and like I said, you got a capable trainer. He'll have that horse ready. Okay.
Yeah.
So who else did you want to go look at?
The 10. Yeah, and you can see, I mean, the horse won last out, and it's a C Optix trade, so obviously there's a typo in there.
Oh, okay.
So I went back and I watched, because sometimes maybe the horse was like promoted by a DQ or something. So I went back and watched, and she did have some favorable aspects just in terms of trip, and a little kind of washed out in there. But I just kind of saw that race as like it kind of was like a top of a form cycle to get the win, maybe even a little bit ouchy. So the fact that she's been off since that race is it's not necessarily a concern. They've given her time and works and things like that. So one that is lightly raced, making a 4-year-old debut, already has numbers in form that's kind of on par for this race. Even though she is stepping up, I could see, I could see her competing in a race like this.
Okay. All right. No. So yeah, I think 6 looks like a potential like single type of horse for people that play like that. And I guess we gave you some alternatives: the 8, 10, and we didn't talk about the 5. He's got that big plot. He's another one that the reason I don't like it is like if I'm going to play a horse that's 8 to 5 in the morning line like the 6. I mean, playing that backup horse that 4 to 1 or 4 to, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's like contrarian to what I'm trying to do, right? If I'm thinking the 6 is such a strong play, I don't know. That's me. I'm just not. But I don't knock anyone looking at that horse.
Yeah, I mean, that's the horse that's coming out of that 1229 common race. So I'm just fading that entire race.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
And a plot like this too, as you mentioned it's a red plot fit. So when you have those red plot fits, sometimes you have horses that look really good and other horses that look really bad, and it's just not giving the full story. So you do have to kind of like deep dive a little bit more to see if that's a
If you're going to take anything away from this plot, you take away that the contention's a snowflake and the speed rating is basically 0 is 10, and you see all the runners are pretty much pressers or closers. You got one EP, that's the one. He's I don't know, maybe that's another horse we kind of need to look at. Maybe.
Oh, I can talk about the 1 a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think we should actually talk.
And then,
about
but I think the 6. That's what it puts me like the 6 is going to sit and either sit or go to the lead, and end the story. But
well, the 10 has a little bit of tactical speed as well, especially if you're talking about a horse that's like progressive, right? What I don't like about the 1, and it's sort of the reason why this horse could take money in here, because it is Chad Brown, it's top connections, but it's a horse that his good horses, they typically run well early. You can see this one was a C+ on debut, and then a bunch of B-, and then breaking the maiden, getting that lone trip on the synthetic off a layoff. So, I mean, just in terms of a softer Optix figure range. So this is the type of horse that's probably people are going to play because of the connections, that type of like defensive type. I don't want Chad Brown to beat me, but like as a horse, if you didn't know the connections, it would be like line through, move on right from the start.
I agree. And it's like, like a Chad Brown horse, like starting off with figures in the 70s, the horse is, typically if he's got a runner, it's going to start in the 80s, right? I mean, the horse is going to run Took them a
Well,
while.
and then you've pointed this out before too. I mean, they're running her at 10 furlongs, which means they know she, you
Right.
know, like maybe just stamina will get there, and that didn't even do it. So yeah, I'm not a fan.
Good, good. That was a good point. I'm glad we stopped and did that. Okay, so let me move on to 11. I'm gonna look at my notes here. You know, I got this as a spread race. I don't know about you. There's a lot of different ways this can go. Okay, one of the ways it can go is that the 9 could wire the field. You can see where the 9 plots on both standard and the surface and distance plot is pretty good. I'm gonna just look at the 9 for a second. This is kind of a horse that. You know, look at the notes as traffic, but here's interesting. When I looked at the note, the extended comment was that crowded in the early stages. Okay, so this is a horse that kind of needs the lead or is most effective in the lead. So that's a negative. The time before he was kind of against again trouble to start. So I don't know if that's a pattern with this horse, but you can see when this horse got kind of the lone lead, runs pretty good. One race was against the flow, the other one he won on. So. You know, there's a potential if this horse gets loose, you know, maybe he can do some damage. So that was one scenario I was kind of looking at. And what I do with races like this is, you know, either like the horse that gets the lead wins, or, you know, especially the way you look at this plot, I'm worried about horses chasing this horse. I'm looking for horses. I want horses that could finish. And so like, I'm looking for squares, honestly, basically. And I know I'm kind of like, 4, 6, 7, and 10 are the horses that I, you know, look like squares to me in this race that could, if the you know the 9 comes back to the field, they could be picking up the pieces. So that was kind of my approach on this race.
Yeah, I respected the plot, but it is a higher speed rate and a contention for a horse that needs to be lone. And this just, you know, a lot of layoff lines on a lightly raced 5-year-old. You know, there's some issues that are, you know, under the surface and a little bit out in front of you. Also, when I went back and I looked at the plots for 8 furlong dirt races, and surprisingly, they haven't run that many. Coming from off the pace is actually okay. It's very rare that front runners carry. So, you know, I was kind of a little bit more kind of like open-minded in this race and sort of looking for, as you mentioned, horses that can finish. And I think class comes into play in this race a little bit too. I know it's a lower level claiming race, but you know, when you're just kind of looking at, there's horses that have been running at this level and not winning. So I kind of eliminated them and more focused on the horses that are dropping into the 9. The 9 is one of those droppers, but dropping with suspect form is different than dropping to win, right? Where a horse that's been a little bit competitive at slightly higher and just needs that, you know, it's in good form and just not quite getting there. So a couple horses that kind of fit that to me were the 10. And again, you know, I'm not as concerned with the closer because I've looked at the plots and I've seen this is a third start of the form cycle. Improving Optix figures this cycle, and getting back to the dirt, you know, it just with that improving pattern just looks like this horse is in just sort of the right place in time. Whether he wins is a different story, but it looks like there's the intent there and has this horse sort of in the right spot. The other one is the 3. Another one that doesn't look great, but it did run at this class level last out, but was claimed out of that race, has had time since, so it's basically starting a new form cycle, and it's an upgrade with a barn change. And just going back to his races from last summer over this course and distance, those are both races that stack up on par in terms of speed figures at a slightly higher level. So just for a horse that, you know, kind of has the numbers, those were 2 that just kind of fit that to me. 4 and 11 were 2 horses that I thought had long shot potential, just kind of based on sort of the you know, the plot and change they have been running at this level. I'm trying to think. I think there's one more. The 6, is that one that we had on there? Was that? Did you talk about that one?
I said, you know, closer that, you know, just I you know, I didn't kind of delve in because this form, like when you look at these non-winners too, it's, you know, like I don't know, you know, like it's like I don't know what to expect. So I mean, I like your approach with class, so that's good. But like I said, I was just kind of focused who could finish up in this race, and he was one of them. That's how I
Yeah.
feel. So, but you said 3. I mean, so you're spread here. I mean, I'm a spread in this race. You're a spread too, but it sounds like you like some of the class horses, like the 3. Well, I don't know if it was called. Yeah, back.
Yeah, it's sort of class, and then just more form cycle, and just putting horses like where they can compete. They've been at this level, maybe had an excuse or haven't tried this level yet, and so yeah, the 3 and the 10 seemed to kind of fit that. And the 6 was getting a little bit of class relief plus the plot, so I used that one. And then the 9, I mean, you can see it on the plot, but it's just not a horse I have confidence in because of the the drop on suspect form, and
I just cannot use them. That's kind of my thing. So it's a spread in that race. That's a tough race. Those non-winners too, always like it's terrible about them. They can chalk out, but you never know when or what. It's difficult. And another kind of difficult race maybe to close it out, because you got a lot of first-time starters in this race. I watched
a lot of Works.
Oh, good. Because here's just my opinion without looking at Works. First of all, Chad Brown's got 2 horses in here, right? The 3 and the 6. And I like the interesting at it because he doesn't win with firsters at Gulfstream. So maybe you got something on. I mean, he's old.
Well, these two are working together.
Yeah.
And it's a very different style of training, like the East Coast and West Coast. I mean, they're under a hold. They do a lot like after, so you see those slower times, and they tend to gallop out. The 3 is a horse that watching his Works gets very washy. So that was just kind of one thing I noticed. Also seems like kind of a headstrong type. So I think, for the 3, they're going to look to show speed. Visually, I liked, really, I had a hard time separating them or getting excited about them for the matter. 6, Thistle, he's out of Arrogate, and neither you or I care about pedigree that much, but I do notice when you start seeing, like, he kind of looks like Arrogate the way he travels, it's like that lower, like, kind of head carriage, so it kind of has that style where it's like, you just, it's not like this brilliance of speed, but just kind of overall visuals, I liked him a little bit more, but that was just kind of something I noticed of those 2, but to your point, not winning a lot. I looked elsewhere where both those horses I could see using them. They're coming into this race fit, so that's on their side.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, from the firsters, you're gonna laugh at me. Maybe you have some insight. The 12 is the horse I want of the firsters. I don't know what he looks like. I just when I
watched this one work.
Okay, so when I see like Mike Maker, first of all, he can get a horse to run long. Even the first time. Second thing is when he uses Paco Lopez on the turf at Gulfstream, seems like he has intent. So like that's all I'm doing, because I don't like to Stidham. He doesn't kind of win first at these tracks with this kind of profile. So that's me. That's kind of where I am on the firsters. But I think the horse to beat is the 4. There's no doubt in my mind. I thought that was a really good debut. Sprinting. I think the horse that came back and ran, they both galloped out past the Wesley Ward horse. The horse that ran second came back and improved by 15 Optix points when he stretched out. I think the horse can improve dramatically when he stretched out. I thought that was a good race. It was a fast race. It was those 5 furlong races, and they couldn't catch the Ward horse. So I like the 4.
I didn't mind the 4 just kind of based on the horses that have run. I would have liked to have seen him back a little bit quicker. There's some gaps in the return Works. Those are things that just were, a little bit curious. Yeah. As far as the 12, watching this one work, again, another horse, he's been under a hold the whole time. So take the times with a grain of salt. But back on January 23rd, he worked in company with a horse called Fancy Liquor, who's an older horse. It was actually a stakes winner at 3, and he's been in graded stakes races since. So, they're matching up this horse with, putting him against some good company. So to your point, as far as positive intent, I think that pairing kind of sides with that too. The Stidham horse, he's a big price in here. This is the number 9, another first answer. He's breezing on the main track, looks on the turfy side, looks fit. He's been second best with another horse. I forget what that horse is called, but he's been working with the chestnut, kind of second best, but that other horse looks pretty good. So might need a race. And the 8 looks fine for turf, just kind of visually while he's working on the dirt, but class is questionable with that horse.
The other horse we didn't talk about, I thought I had a chance, was the 11. I mean, he's stretching out. I think this horse, I mean, he had trouble last time. He's better than look. He was against the bias. He had kickback. So I think this horse has some upside and switching back to turf. Could he route? I don't know. I'm just thinking in this race, he might be good enough to win and at a price. So I would want to include Urban Forest, number 11.
Yeah, I like that one for those reasons as well. I mean, they did try to stretch him out in the second start, so at least that's positive, just to think, some intent from that perspective, and had run him on the turf, which is another positive. And they might have just been waiting to run him on Lasix. Maybe that was part of the reason. He did have some setbacks in training earlier this year, but he's been consistent working late. So yeah, I think we're pretty much kind of the same way in here.
Yeah. So for me, the keys are 4, 11, 12, and use whatever you want to use. but that's my key. Who's your keys in this race, Emily?
Yeah, I kind of leaned to the lightly race. I went 11, 12.
Okay,
went
cool.
with my birthday.
Okay, there you go. So so I think that was pretty good. I think you can go back and look at any of this, but I think this is really some good information to attack this pick 6. It looks kind of juicy.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can use this information to create some tickets. And if you want some more of this great content, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and so we can help us out. And I think that's a wrap. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm excited about this sequence. I'm glad you are too.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you and I see it the same way, but I think our seeing it will be a lot different from the public.
Oh yeah,
So.
yeah. Because I mean, it's the way we approach things is different. We have different information, and I think that's good for us and for our clients.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want this great content, check out our website, OptixEQ.com. I mean, there's a lot of good content, and there's no one way to handicap, but I think it just gives you kind of a different perspective. We're focused on pace and form, and those are the things that are kind of a little bit more subjective when you're starting to handicap. And they're harder to learn, but once you get them, once that light bulb goes on, I always tell everybody, it's fun. It really is a lot more fun. So that's it for us. Have a great day, folks.